Okay, heading home. I was having a conversation recently with somebody about our morning pledge at school. Part of the pledge says, I will be truthful to myself and everyone else. And the person was asking, why truthful to myself? Why not I will be truthful? The way I have always understood it is that sometimes we get so caught up in our own lies that we start to believe them as truth. It was Sir Walter Scott who wrote, "Oh, what a web we weave when we first practice to deceive." By the way, for many years, I erroneously attributed that to Shakespeare, but it was Sir Walter Scott who actually wrote it. And I think the idea of the web is very symbolic, because that's what we do. When we say a lie, then we have to create another lie to cover up for that lie, and so on. So that is why I think that it's important for that part of the pledge to be there. I will be truthful to myself and everyone else. I recently saw a commercial in which Mary Todd Lincoln is trying on a dress, and she asks Abraham Lincoln something to the effect, does this dress make me look fat? And Abraham Lincoln, being honest Abe, says, well, maybe a little. Of course, Mary Todd Lincoln gets upset and walks away. And we see that trend in many of our characters through history. For example, we all know the story about George Washington cutting down the cherry tree. And then when his father asked him if he had done it, that he responded, I cannot tell a lie. So we want our leaders to be truthful. But yet, those of us who are familiar with politics, you know what I mean. But anyway, these were the characters that were shown to us as examples of what it was like to be truthful. And as a kid, I always tried to be very honest. Many times saying the truth, even though lying could have easily gotten me out of trouble. For example, a story that comes to mind is that when I was in 3rd grade, I was chewing gum in class. And that was against the rules. So the teacher was walking towards me, and she had a paddle in her hand. They used to paddle us back then. And she approached me and she asked, are you chewing gum? And I did this thing where I swallowed the gum, and I said, no ma'am, I'm not. And she said, okay. And she walked away. Well, I was so racked with guilt that I had told a lie that after a few minutes of sweating profusely, I walked up to her desk and I told her, ma'am, I was chewing gum. And of course, she gave me the punishment for chewing gum, which was 3 licks with a paddle. I suspect, though, that because I told her the truth, she kind of took it easy on me and didn't paddle me quite as hard as other times. Another story that comes to mind was when I was in middle school. We used to call it junior high back then. I had forgotten to do my math homework. And so I was doing it in the class before, which was history. And I saw the teacher walking towards me. And so I slid the paper under my history book. And the teacher approached me and asked me, are you doing your assignment? I said, yes, ma'am. And I showed her the book. And she said, okay. And she walked away. Well, again, being raised to be an honest kid, I took my math assignment and I walked up to her desk and I told her, ma'am, I was doing my math assignment. And she said, okay, thank you for telling me. And she put it off to the side, and I went back, ready to go to math class and get punished for not completing my homework. And as it turns out, the teacher didn't pick it up. So I got up easy. But in the meantime, I went through that agony of feeling guilty about lying. And of course, we know that there are people in our society that make a living out of lying. And the better lies you can tell, the more successful you can be. My wife and I recently went to a magic show, and the magician kept telling us how he was going to fool us. And yet, even though he was doing it right in front of us, and he was telling us how he was going to fool us, we still will get fooled. We were still deceived. And we were impressed by the deception. In having a recent conversation with our counselor, I asked her, is there ever a time where lying is okay? And of course she said no. It's never okay to lie. I said, but what if you're gonna hurt somebody's feelings by saying the truth? She said, well then you just don't say anything. I always tell my students, she said, that lying is never right. She says, I'm a catechist. And in catechism I tell the students, you never lie. You always say the truth. And so I said, but you know, even in the Bible, in the Old Testament, Jacob basically got his inheritance from his father by deceiving his brother and by deceiving his father through a lie. And of course our counselor said in her wisdom, yes, but that's why we have a New Testament. Okay, point well taken. So my question still remains, is it ever okay to lie? Do I want people to lie to me? If I ask for an opinion, like for example, if I ask my wife, does this suit look okay? What if she would say, no, it doesn't? Change into something else. That looks bad. It might hurt my feelings a little bit. But at the same time, I want for her to be honest with me. So maybe we do have to be honest all the time. I don't know. Is it ever okay to lie? Somebody recently said, you know, it's even one of the commandments, thou shalt not lie, which of course is not true. The commandment says, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor, which is something completely different. Of course, the argument can be made that lying can be included in bearing false witness, but that's another story. So my question still remains, is it ever okay to lie? In the words of our counselor,
say the truth. It's the best thing to do.